My name is Darin Wybenga. I'm from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the treaty partners for much of the Greater Golden Horseshoe and Oakville, seeing that we're here today. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I just want to give a brief overview of our role on the land and the treaties that we hold in the area. Our ancestors came here on the north shore of Lake Ontario about 1700, give or take a few years. And we came to occupy, control, and exercise stewardship over about 4 million acres of land. We are a very seasonally migrant people. We moved with the passing seasons. So in the spring and in the fall, you would find us on our salmon fisheries at places like this, 16 Mile Creek or at Bronte, or at the River Credit or at Etobicoke Creek. And we lived quite happily on the land. And first, we had trade relationships with the French, and later on, we traded with the British. Now, the great thing about the French is they never had a desire for our lands. The French were interested in beaver pelts, of course, and perhaps they were interested in putting up a mission somewhere, something to spread the gospel with. But that all changed when the British took over from the French about officially 1763 with the Treaty of Paris. If you remember right, the British had 13 colonies along the eastern seaboard of the United States. They had a tremendous hunger for land that was only increased with the advent of the American Revolution. There was plenty of people that wanted to rebel against the British Crown. The American colonies had thought that they were better off looking after themselves, as they had actually been doing for quite a number of years. So the Americans want to throw off the yoke of the British Crown, the British Parliament. And so the rebellion starts. But there are many people in those 13 colonies that want to remain loyal to the Crown. We call them loyalists. But all kinds of nasty things could happen to you if you were a loyalist in those days. You could be tarred and feathered, quite literally. You could be thrown into jail, your property confiscated. But if you could make your way north into the maritime region of Canada or north of Lake Erie, north of Lake Ontario, you could be rewarded for your loyalty. The Crown would give you a grant of land for starting your lives anew. And so that starts off treaty making in what becomes southern Ontario, because the people that had land were the First Nations. So the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation had its first treaty with the British Crown in Niagara, right in the midst of the Revolution, 1781, for a strip of land along the Niagara River. And the next treaty we had was in 1784, negotiated in 1784. The Revolution was over by then. The Six Nations, actually you know them as the Haudenosaunee from New York State, had fought for the British in the American Revolution, lost their lands, so they needed a place to move, and so they obtained a grant from the British Crown. The Crown came to the Mississaugas of the Credit and asked if we would part with a significant batch of land at the western end of Lake Ontario, and we did so in 1784, and the Haudenosaunee were able to move into southern Ontario along the Grand River. Those were early treaties, and when we went into the treaty-making process with the Crown, initially we didn't understand what we were getting into. Our intent was to share the land. We had no concept of sole proprietorship of land like the Europeans had. We tended to share the land. We all used the resources, we shared it, no concept of ownership. But the British viewed those early treaties as land purchases with our people, that they were buying the land outright. It was theirs to do what they wished with. And that was really disastrous for our people. We expect to share, the British expect to own it. We find the forests chopped down. We find fences on our pathways. So we can no longer carry out our traditional lifestyle. The hunting, the fishing, the gathering is all seriously diminished. Our traditional economy collapses. We're really not sharing the land with the Crown or with the British and the settlers. And that actually comes out in negotiations for the treaty that involves much of Oakville. We call it the Head of the Lake Treaty. Colonel William Claus, the Crown negotiator, comes and asks us for more land. Land basically that covers a huge strip from Etobicoke Creek, more or less, into where Toronto is, all the way over to present-day Burlington. We call it the Brant Tract lands. And we want to think it over a little bit, and we finally expressed to Colonel Claus and say to him, Father, when you asked for land previously, we cheerfully gave it to you. But now, we want to know why we're so ill-treated. We try and move about our lands, and the farmers shoot our dogs. They chase us off our camping spots. We were supposed to be helped by these farmers, by these settlers, and we're not. We're being ill-treated. But nevertheless, we acquiesced to that treaty. We know it as Treaty 14, so we reserved those creeks. And right now, I'm thrilled to be here at one of our fisheries. And the sad thing is, 3 years after the war is done in 1815, the British come to us again and ask for more land. This time they're asking for 650,000 acres north of the Head of the Lake Treaty lands. So Colonel Claus came to us again and said, I see your people are thin and miserable. Why don't you give the land over to us and we will make use of it? So we acquiesced. We wanted to make sure that we could still have our fisheries at 12, 16 Mile and the Credit River. Fortunately, we signed that Adjutant's Treaty 1818, but we were able to reserve our lands here at 12 and 16 Mile Creek. Those reserves are the only reserves we have left. That's what's left of our traditional territory. Colonel Claus comes to us again in 1820 and asks for our remaining lands. He recognized once again our poor state, our impoverishment, our sickness, and he entered into treaty negotiations with us again, if you can call them negotiations. We were in no position to argue. There's slightly less than 200 of us at this point in our history. Under the terms of Treaty 22, we were also allowed to take 200 acres of space at the Credit River for a future settlement if we ever decided to permanently settle down. So we went from 4 million acres of land in 1781 to just 200 acres of land at the Credit River in 1820. We changed a course of direction. We realized that the old ways were not working for ourselves. And with the help of one of our band members, the Reverend Peter Jones, we changed course. We converted to Methodism, and we became farmers, and we settled down on a mission village at the Credit River. So with the remainder of our land gone, taken by the British Crown, we were in essence landless except for 200 acres at the Credit River. A few years later, one of our band members, his English name is Peter Jones, came to our rescue. And we were able to pivot away from our traditional lifestyle and move toward a lifestyle that more closely resembled the settlers. About 1825, Peter Jones, later on becomes Reverend Peter Jones, converts most of our people to Methodism. And with that conversion to Methodism came the adoption of a whole new worldview. No longer were we going to be the hunters, gatherers, and fishers, but we were going to be Christian farmers. 1826, with the help of the government of Upper Canada, we move into a mission village on the Credit River. It's now the site of the Mississaugas Golf and Country Club. We move into that mission village and transform our lives completely. We learn about agriculture, and we're talking farming here, not the not the First Nation crops, typical crops of corn, beans, and squash, but we're talking oats, wheat, barley. So we're cutting down the trees, planting the fields, and cultivating them. We learn all about animal husbandry. Before, our only domestic animal used to be the dog. Well, now we have cows and pigs and chickens and oxen, all kinds of things, complete transformation. So I'm very thankful to say we've prospered, and as a people, we're always realizing and recognizing that we have to transform ourselves even today to keep pace with a modern society. We're very much a resilient people, and we realize that's part of our history. We're proud of who we are, and we know we'll keep changing to benefit our people.